slide in the kidney? Y'all remember that? When we had the afferent arteriole and the efferent arteriole? You vaguely remember that? Remember the afferent, I think I drew it on the board going the other way, but the afferent arteriole is bigger than the efferent arteriole, and blood comes in here under a certain degree of pressure. And so the opening going out is smaller than the one coming in, and so this is designed for filtration. Alright, so filtration of blood into the nephron. So we got three things we're going to talk about. Filtration, reabsorption, and tubular secretion. I've mentioned these things barely. I mentioned them in 24-1 in the lab when we did the slide of the kidney. We didn't go into it, but I mentioned them. Now we're going to go into it now. We have to reabsorb most of the stuff. Most of the stuff that filters across here is good stuff. We can't get along without it. It's a lot of electrolytes, a lot of water, a lot of things our bodies need. So we reabsorb. So this is what tubular reabsorption, from tubular fluid into the blood. In other words, this stuff right here is called filtrate, initial filtrate, which that becomes urine. This will become urine. But then there are some things that are left in the blood that we need to get out of there. Tubular secretion helps get rid of excess hydrogen ions and things like that. Maybe drugs like penicillin will be taken out of the blood, maybe put back into the urine to go to the urine. All right, so now here's the way this works. Now let me show you. So there are three things we're going to be talking about. Filtration, reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Those are the three things we talk about in the function of a nephron, how it works. Remember, the nephron is the functional unit. So here's the way all this mess goes. It goes like this. Okay, so we come on down. Urine formation, glomerular filtration. Now, filtration is a forcing. It's like if this door were closed, and it's forcing things across. It's been forcing this door to get out. And there's going to be opposing forces to that. There's going to be opposing forces to this push going that way. All right, so right here, filtration, forcing fluids and dissolved substances through a membrane by outside pressure. Rate of filtration is dependent on blood pressure in the afferent arteriole. I will tell you this, a person with real high blood pressure, extremely high blood pressure, will find themselves having to urinate more frequently because the blood pressure is high and that filtration rate is going to increase. All right, so in the afferent arteriole, okay. Now right here, so rate of filtration is dependent on the blood pressure in the afferent arteriole. Now right here, let me show you. Filtrate contains, this is what I was just trying to say to you a while ago. The filtrate, the initial filtrate, contains materials that are present in the blood except, except formed elements. Formed elements, now what are the formed elements? Do y'all remember? Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, those are formed elements. These things, and large proteins, should not be forced across. They should not go across. If you've got blood in your urine, and I was telling y'all I was looking up Bright's disease this morning about 6 o'clock on Google. Bright's disease, now the modern doctors call it glomerulonephritis or nephritis. Bright's disease was named by a doctor in 1827 as Bright's disease. Modern doctors don't use, and urologists really don't use the word Bright's disease much anymore. It's just kind of a general term for kidney problems, kidney infection. But anyway, and the reason I mention that is if you had Bright's disease, you might have blood in the urine. Okay? Okay, so right here, except formed elements and large proteins. Now, here's the deal. Now, here's where it gets to something you haven't heard before. If this is not hard, but you've never heard it, unless you've had this before. All right? Opposing forces. Okay. Glomerula, blood, hydrostatic pressure. Chief force. That's a pushing force. And this refers to blood pressure in the glomerulus. What is the glomerulus? Remember, the glomerulus is the tuft of capillaries. So, glomerula, blood, hydrostatic pressure. In other words, that refers to blood pressure in the glomerulus. Now, Kimberly, you remember what the glomerulus is? That's the tuft of capillaries. That is the tuft of capillaries. So the blood pressure. That is a chief force. That's like if I had this door closed. And that right here, if I pull this tube like this, and then it had this door closed. All right, now right here, and I represent the glomerulus. Now this is the pushing force right here because of the blood pressure in the glomerulus. It's pushing this door like this, pushing it. Now I'm gonna use this door example for two other things in a minute. I'm gonna use that door example. All right, now right here, okay. Now it's about 50. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to lock you out. Come on in. Use the door as an illustration. All right, that refers to the blood pressure in the glomerulus, which is about 55 millimeters of mercury. All right, now, opposing force, opposition to glomerular blood hydrostatic pressure. Glomerular blood hydrostatic pressure basically has reference to the blood pressure in the glomerulus. And this is a pushing force to push that door open. But there are opposing forces to that. It's like if I put Adrian and Kimberly on the other side of that door, and I'm on this side of the door. Now, if those two women over there are pushing this way, and I'm pushing this way, now if they can keep me from opening that door, I've got ring and shutdown. In other words, I have to overcome the power of those two women in order for my kidneys to be working. In other words, and I'm going to show you how this works. But this power of me pushing this door, they are opposing forces. They don't want me to get out, but I want to get out. And so if I can't overpower them, then I've got kidney failure. All right, now let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me come back to this. All right, opposing capsular hydrostatic pressure, the walls of the Bowman's capsule is what that's going to say, and the fluid already present. The fluid already present. It's already filtered across. That puts up a pushing force. That puts up a pushing force. All right, that's one. That would be Adrian. Adrian is going to be capsular hydrostatic pressure, and Kimberly is going to be blood osmotic pressure. All right, now watch. The other pressure right here, and a push. Now watch this. The force there is about 15 millimeters of mercury. In other words, the capsular hydrostatic pressure, the walls of the Bowman's capsule, the fluid already present, that's an opposition to something else coming in. All right, then there's another deal. Now let me show you. Here's where Kimberly comes in. Now right here, blood osmotic pressure. In other words, proteins and formed elements in the blood give blood a higher osmotic concentration. Therefore, water tends to want to move back in. It tends to want to move back into the blood. It tends to want to move from the initial filtrate back in. You see what you kind of get the picture? In other words, the proteins and the formed elements give blood a higher osmotic concentration. Therefore, water tends to move out of the filtrate and back into the capillary. All right, now that pressure right there, blood osmotic, that pressure is about 30 millimeters of mercury. Okay? All right, now so we've got, now watch this. All right, now here's what we got. Here's what I just showed you. Here's what we just went over. Here's the glomerular blood hydrostatic pressure. Now, if your numbers are different on your sheet, don't worry about it. You can always adjust the numbers. The numbers on everybody won't be the same anyway. So if the numbers are a little bit different, that ain't the situation. The situation is to understand what's going on. All right, so numbers, don't worry about numbers, because it ain't going to be the same with everybody. Like nobody's blood pressure in here is the same. Okay? All right, so right here, here's the glomerular blood hydrostatic pressure. All right, capsular hydrostatic pressure. Capsular hydrostatic pressure, the walls of the Bowman's capsule and fluid already present, that puts up an opposition. And then the other one is blood osmotic pressure. Blood colloid, they call it blood colloid, or blood osmotic pressure. Notice that arrow's going into here. That has reference to the protein in the red blood cells. That the osmotic pressure is about 30. In other words, the osmotic concentration is greater in here, so fluid's going to tend to want to come back in from a region of low osmotic concentration, one higher. You see that? So fluid's going to come back in. All right, now here's the deal. And if your numbers are not the same as down here, don't worry about it. It's no big issue. No big issue if your numbers are not the same. They might not be. All right, but look at this. Glomerular blood hydrostatic pressure, 15 millimeters of mercury. And I think even on my PowerPoint slide, the next one I had a little bit different numbers, but the scenario is still the same. The main thing here, y'all, that you have to understand, the main idea, as they say in the woods, the main thing you got to understand is that this has got to be when we take this one and subtract this one, This one and this one subtracted from that one, we've got to have a positive number. Do you follow me? It's got to be positive. If it's not positive, you don't have a urine formation. And without urine formation, that means you and I can't live.